We are the Laudato Si Commission. Please come on in. This is it's an honor. I'm Chris Bacon from Santa Clara University, a co-chair of Laudato Si Commission, and it's an honor to be presenting here today with my co-chair, Michael Shook.
Hi, everybody. Mike Shook from this place. Years ago, Father Garanzini told me in a certain circumstance, he said, Mike, never waste a crisis. And so we came down here and we thought we were in a crisis because we weren't prepared for this venue. And of course, you've got that cross through the screen, which is inconvenient. But we're not going to waste it. So welcome.
So we'll just go ahead and jump into it. This is the AJCU Laudato Si Commission advancing a shared agenda for our common home. And, you know, we are a blessed commission in many ways because we have a framework to come from. We have the Pope's encyclical Laudato Si, which was published on May 24th, 2015, actually the 6th birthday of my daughter as well. And so it was just a beautiful moment. And for all of us, we have a framework to come from, and we have the wise words that reminding us to hear that realize that environmental ecological approach is also a social approach that integrates questions of justice and the environment, and to hear both the cry of the earth and the cry of the poor. And as the Padawami remind us, action on behalf of life transforms because the relationship between self and the world is reciprocal. As we work to heal the earth heals us as well. So with these brief moments in mind, we're going to start with an opening prayer from another one of the members of our commission.
Thank you. I'm Tom Ryan, Loyola New Orleans. And may I be the first to tell a joke about a group walking into a bar. So I think we'll hear several of those today. So let's see. As you're able, please stand. And let us begin with a moment of silence, remembering that for St. Ignatius, we're in the presence of a God who loves us without condition, who loves us at this moment, with this breath and with every breath we take. Let us remember that our bodies consist of the same elements as Lake Michigan consists of the sun and the moon and the stars and all the rest of creation. And in the words of Pope Francis, the life of the Spirit is not disassociated from the body or from nature or from worldly realities, but lived in and with them, in communion with all that surrounds us. Amen.
All right. It's wonderful. Some folks are still coming in. That's great. Just a quick run through of what the next few minutes entails. Chris and I will have some brief remarks about the process that our commission went through and some of the research we discovered in this process. Then we're into kind of the cascade effect. You're going to get a lot of proposals put in front of you pretty fast. We've got 17 of them, and we're going to take 30 minutes to kind of quickly present the proposals that we've come up with over this year and a half. And to help you with that, you've got them on the sheet there, and we hope you take that with you. And indicate, as we're going through the proposals, indicate either on a QR code or on the sheets that you have, which of the proposals you're particularly interested in. You know, they're all numbered, so if you could put a number down. Yes, we can turn up the volume. Hello? Okay. All right, great. We're really interested, what we want to do is we're really interested in finding out people that are interested in particular proposals so we can get back to you and start a kind of a serious conversation about what action steps we might take together. So that's important. And on the QR code also in the comments, you could put the number of the proposals you're interested in. Then at the end, we're going to have 30 minutes of actually a personal reflection and some small and large group work.
So, as I mentioned earlier, we come from the tradition of building off of Laudato Si, and a seminal moment that happened after the publication, as people remember and if you haven't seen the letter, I really encourage you to watch it. It really shifted our dialogue, but a seminal moment that emerged was at the end of the 5th year, and we're actually coming up on the 10th year anniversary of Laudato Si. There was a press conference that's May 25th, 2021. And I was looking to see, like, where did these Laudato Si goals come from? How many people have heard of Laudato Si planning goals? Just raise your hand. Yeah, a lot of you, right? So it's a very useful tool. They were first publicized by the Vatican's Council on Social for the Dicastery for the Promotion of Human and Social Development, and in that they elaborated these 7 goals, and so that is a big component of our framework. And they were elaborated to be faithful to the full breadth of purpose behind the meaning of integral ecology, which includes the science, but also the ethics and all of these different dimensions, right? So it's a powerful reminder and a framework that we use for these Laudato Si action plans. We were given the charge, and I think this is the genius of Father Garanzini. Our commission was given the charge to basically come up with proposals that make sustainability, environmental justice, and integral ecology the hallmark of Jesuit higher education. There is a few more details associated with it, but essentially that is our calling. So if at the end of this we have a powerful proposal, we can say 50 people from the AJCU went into a bar and came up with a proposal to transform Jesuit higher education for environmental justice. We'll see how many of these we end up with. I want to acknowledge the work of a robust commission. This is a mixed commission of 21 participants from 14 different universities, including faculty, staff, administrators. And I really want to call out the contributions of sustainability coordinators that are in the operations and across institutional work that really helped ground many of our discussions with faculty. And not all of the people are here to present today. Some folks like Jennifer Eagleton, who's made major contributions, won't be up here presenting. Others had to travel already. So please take a look at our website, and there'll be more information there. Back to Mike.
One of our products of our year and a half was the Eco-Social Engagement Report, and it was essentially an inventory that we started a year and a half ago. We sent representatives of every university, all 28, and that includes St. John's in Belize, to begin helping us find out what kind of eco-social activities are happening on your campus. Of course, there's the numbers. There's how much CO2 is being emitted, how much all of that. But we were on kind of the softer elements, student groups, courses, etc. So it took a year and a half and about 3 iterations with your representatives. Every one of you here had someone sending in information, and maybe some of you were that person. But basically, just as an example, we asked institutions to give examples in their institutional operations of what glances off of environmental and activist concerns, academic affairs, community formation, and civic engagement. And I really urge you to look at the report. It's in the Assembly website under our commission. But there's a lot of interesting data that we pulled from that. And of course, it's incomplete. We're going to keep updating it as institutions bring in more material. But you'll see some of our strengths. We actually are quite strong across the 28 AJUs of providing education in environmental science and environmental studies. We could do better on introducing integral ecology. We discovered that. There's another area. We do very well on creating centers and institutes devoted to the environment, but we could do, overall we could do much more on creating chairs, supporting research, scholarships, fellowships related to this. Another interesting result that we came up was, let's see, here it is. About half of our institutions have in ministry and spirituality programs that relate to the environment, but only 5 of the 28 actually have eco retreats. So that's one area that we want to try to encourage and get people together that can help each other. How do we do this? And that's kind of the purpose of our emphasizing that and other things. But please look at that eco-social report.
Another thing through our collective reflection, a lot we learned from these inventories, some additional research, and also just sharing reflections among our team, is that in many cases, in spite of the pledges that have been made to become a Laudato Si university, as 26 of 28 universities have made those pledges, the question of governance and to what extent are these plans or committees to develop these plans, have they been embedded within institutional governance at the highest levels of leadership? So there's some models we'll hear from some universities have done some great examples. In other cases, it's often not have support from the president, provost. And often there is VP for mission and ministry involved, but not always. We also looked at case studies from outside of the AJCU. So for example, University of California, where I'm based, from the state, they have a centralized presidency office, which is different than the AJCU model, but they also have an office that communicates their sustainability work and their commitments to carbon emissions reductions, for example. So they can say across, the 10 campuses and 3 or 4 medical schools, we have reduced carbon emissions by, this many 100 millions of tons. We have done a lot of that work across the AJCU. We have not quantified it systematically, or even we're doing like a real rapid assessment. We're still in the process, nor have we communicated that collectively, right? So that's a gap that we see in terms of a missed opportunity to communicate our collective work and maybe some lessons learned we can learn from elsewhere. They're also able to do things like go to the state or go to the federal level and say, okay, we have, $100 million for climate adaptation work, and we're going to be rolling it out across the state. We could think about cross-collaboration work that is coordinated in part through an AJCU office.
Hello, I'm Sue Margulis from Canisius University, and I'm sorry I don't have a bar joke right now. But one of the areas of proposals we focused on was education, and teaching. So I'm going to explain some of those to you. And again, in the spirit of Laudato Si, our aim is to incorporate integral ecology at all levels in undergraduate and graduate education. We feel this can be a real hallmark of a Jesuit education. So just to remind you, this connects to the Laudato Si Action Plan Goal number 5, ecological education, as well as the universal apostolic preferences of journeying with youth and caring for the common home. So within this sort of category of teaching, we have 3 sub-proposals, and you'll find them all on your sheets there. The first is to encourage all AJCU institutions to incorporate integral ecology at all levels, both undergraduate and graduate, major and non-major, so that all students have some experience, some exposure, are able to acquire knowledge about integral ecology and their role in this. There are many ways to do this, and we realize the idea of altering a core curriculum or introducing required courses is usually a Herculean task at most of our institutions, but there are many different ways to do this, and we provide some examples, and I believe the PowerPoint will be available, so you'll have those links. For example, here at Loyola University Chicago, there is a required freshman level course on environmental sustainability. Regis University has an upper level required course. We've also included links to several of the Laudato Si action plans that include some strategies for how to incorporate integral ecology across the curriculum. Now, while in an ideal world, it would be wonderful to have required courses, we realize that is not likely, and we realize that institutions will have to work within their own cultures, their own mechanisms to find ways to do this. But there are many ways, and these plans introduce you to some of those. For example, rather than creating a new core requirement, perhaps an institution offers a core capstone course that addresses integral ecology. or adds a module or some content to a freshman year seminar, or even orientation that introduces students to integral ecology. Most, if not all, of our institutions have majors in environmental studies, environmental science, and that's great. But we really need the business majors, the political science majors, the English majors to understand the role that they play in creating, in caring for our common home. And this is what we really are trying to get across. Again, there are many ways to do this. Institutions will do this at different paces, but we think it can truly be a hallmark of a Jesuit education.
Hi, I'm Chad Raphael from Santa Clara University. I just wanted to piggyback on what Sue was saying. We don't expect that everybody is going to reach every goal in this plan in year one. Just like the Laudato Si action plans, which are 7-year plans, schools are going to reach them at different phases. The important thing is to make a plan to meet that goal. Whenever it's going to be, make a plan to meet the goal, right? So our second proposal is that all AJCU institutions should enable faculty to regularly participate in the professional development that we need to focus on teaching integral ecology, pedagogy, and curriculum building. We can't wait for our faculty who don't know how to teach this to retire, and we can't assume that new hires are all going to know how to teach this material. The world can't wait for that from us. We're the faculty we've been waiting for. And you know, the nice thing about faculty is they're pretty good at learning new stuff fast, you know, because they're academics. So we have some nice examples that we can build on as the AJCUs. We have online workshops like Santa Clara's workshop, which I'll be talking a little bit more about at a Thursday session at 2 o'clock today. 3 summer workshops offered online. People can work at their own pace. One on sustainability and justice across the curriculum for anybody in any school, any department can learn how to integrate this material into their course. Another on deepening people's understanding of the concepts of environmental justice and integral ecology and their connections. And a third on pedagogy. I've been seeing wonderful people who've been participating in those workshops here over the last few days, and it's great to meet them. Gonzaga University has a really cool model which they offer for their faculty called the Cataldo Project, which focuses on teaching integral ecology in their bioregion and for their bioregion. So it's a bioregional approach. Gregorianum and others offer online courses in the theology and philosophy of integral ecology. And we have a number of Laudato Si plans that have integrated these goals for professional development into their Laudato Si plans as well that people can look at and draw inspiration from as you're developing your Laudato Si plans.
We're trying to, you know, as you'd expect, trying to create a one-shop shopping center, so to speak, to what we're calling it an integral ecology teaching exchange network. And I'm sure you're all aware of Xavier University's fantastic Jesuits.org. It has so many resources on Jesuit materials. We want to create a kind of counterpart or an addition to that on the ecological and environmental material. There's so much out there. We want to have a AJU specific kind of portal for this information, and that would include teaching experiences, faculty experiences, curricula, syllabi, best practices. There are curriculum hubs already that kind of model this gathering, like Santa Clara has a great one. I want to talk briefly about a textbook that ends up really being a hub. We started this in 2015. It was another Father Garanzini inspiration, but Nancy and Tuckman and I worked on it, Healing Earth, which is, maybe many of you are familiar with it. It's an online free textbook on integral environmental science. It's reaching 60,000 users a year now in high schools and universities. Now, admittedly, some of those are visitors that come in and look for 30 seconds and they're gone, but we've got a lot of use. You can see in these countries, the Spanish version is used a lot in Central and South America, but it is translated into 5 languages, and it's creating kind of a family of products. We've got Laudato Si Action Platform that the Vatican took it on as a representative tool to use for integral ecology. The Modus Exchange Network, we have a global environmental citizenship course that's built around Healing Earth. So we want to try to promote the use of Healing Earth as one of these networking tools.
So we divided up, and as part of the process of the commission, and come on down. We ended up with, first we developed a set of 12 proposals, and then we had a nation discernment process led by Father Dominic Chai, which was very, very fruitful, where we really had to make comments on all the proposals and respond to them. And that's how we ended up with these 5 major themes that we're talking about now. So the first one was teaching. The second one is research. You should be very familiar for many of folks. Again, this is the idea here is inspired by these Laudato Si goals and the UAPs. The research group calls upon AJCU campuses to leverage our different locations and expertise for collaborative work addressing climate change and environmental justice. And we were hard pressed to try to figure out if this fits into one of these 7 goals. So we just boxed them all, because hopefully research and critical reflection moves us in these areas. And it's inspired at least by the first 3 universal apostolic preferences, and perhaps all 4, if we really think about our human body and our interior lives as a space for research and critical reflection, which I would. We have 3 kind of key proposals in this area. The first is to continue to expand the research on our own campuses that's focused along these themes. The second is more modest, and this is one of our commitments, because the big question is, okay, well, what comes next? You guys have been working together for the last 18 months, and then we have a presentation, so what's follow-up? So we do plan to follow up. Mike and I and many other folks here, we're going to stay on. We're in dialogue, and you'll see in our kind of closing proposal, we have a bit of a continuity plan. But for short term, 2 or 3 webinars sharing some of these best practices. So consider yourselves invited to those. There's a way that you can sign up and check off online, and you'll see when we have those QR codes up here. And finally, the elusive challenge of cross-institutional collaboration around these themes. One quick example from my own home institution at Santa Clara University. I'm part of the Environmental Justice and Common Good Initiative, together with my colleague Chad Raphael, Ira Stewart-Fry, and a number of others. We formed an initiative. This is from yesterday, so you won't be able to go back in time, but we have 4 we were really formed around community engaged research for environmental justice and the common good. And we have a series of programs looking at food and climate justice, water and climate justice, youth and engagement. We have a lot of resources online. I encourage you to take a look at it. And also some pilot projects on campus that could offer lessons learned for other places, or even collaborative work around granting programs, networking, and important professional development trainings in this area. I'm going to pass the mic over to Brian.
Good morning, everyone. Brian Henning from Gonzaga University, where I have the pleasure of not only being a professor of philosophy, but I direct our Institute for Climate, Water, and the Environment. Just sharing a little bit of the work that we're doing and how research can motivate and support action in our communities. So we launched in April of 2021. Just a few months later, there was the 2021 heat dome that was the most deadly weather event in Washington state history. And so we thought, well, one of the things we can do is to help our community better understand exactly what happened, because largely the narrative was that this was really just something that affected unhoused people. And of course, they were significantly affected. Most of the people who died were housed. And so this gives a quick rundown of some of the work that we've done to support the community in understanding it. For example, how urban heat is distributed through our community. We got a small NOAA grant to be able to do a citizen science project to be able to understand how heat is distributed in our community, then work with our Department of Health to do a correlation analysis, seeing how those urban heat islands correspond to racial and income categories in ways that you would not expect if you had an environmentally just community. Correlations with redlining, and so demonstrated those statistical correlations. And then that's being used to direct urban tree planting and location of cooling centers. Did a community-wide survey and learned about how many people have air conditioners and don't, and what impediments do they have to using them. Why are they not using the cooling centers that are available, things like that. Got a small grant to work with colleagues from the University of Washington to do a extreme heat symposium. And all of that then is being funneled into the development of the city's first heat response plan. We got caught off guard. In fact, are still relatively caught off guard by this. And so are helping the city using this research to direct actually the development of these plans. Our other major hazard in our area that is affecting much of the West for a decade now, but is now obviously affecting lots of parts of the country, is wildfire smoke. We've had a 230% increase in days above moderate since 2015. And this has obviously lots of complicated health effects. Some of the things that we're doing is again, surveying the community, finding out what the perceptions and experiences are with respect to smoke. and then helping the city develop those plans. So this is an example of how research can then direct good policy making.
Hi, everybody. Julie Gaffney from Fordham University. I wanted to talk a little bit about the opportunities that are becoming more and more common to locate funding for environmental justice initiatives, especially those that are driven by frontline communities. And so, as we know, the Inflation Reduction Act has generated unprecedented funding in this area that is inspiring other funders to, I think, catch up with Pope Francis's vision of environmental justice and working first with communities that are disproportionately impacted by the climate crisis and by environmental stressors, often due to decades, centuries of disenfranchisement, disinvestment, and marginalization. And so one example is the grant that we were fortunate to get at Fordham University. It is the Thriving Communities Grantmaker Grant. So it's funded by the Inflation Reduction Act, and it's part of the Justice 40 legislation. So 40% of IRA funds are designated to go to disadvantaged communities. So what this is a grant-making grant. It's a $50 million grant. 40 of the 50 passes through in sub-grant awards to community-led initiatives in environmental justice throughout Puerto Rico, New York, New Jersey, and the U.S. Virgin Islands. What's exciting here is this is not only for traditional EJ groups. This is for any community organization that is doing environmental justice work. So that can be recovery, coastal resilience, community access, and revitalization of green spaces and waterways, public and environmental health initiatives, capacity building for grassroots organizations, workforce development for emerging roles in the green economy, education pipelines, transitions to clean and renewable energy, sustainable transportation, agriculture, food systems. And so where does this fit into research? Because a lot of this work is going to be led by community organizations, by community leaders. One of the 4 buckets for funding for this particular opportunity, and this is not uncommon for many of these, is for assessment, research, data projects. And so there are opportunities there. This is going to fund 200 projects for faculty members to partner on each and every one of those with community organizations on the specific research projects. Then there's research on the impact of the grant maker itself, to understand how well these programs work, to modify them for current and future use. And then finally, comparative analysis. What does it look like if we compare the 15 different air quality monitoring projects going on throughout this region too, throughout the nation? One thing I would love to talk about in one of our future webinars is how, as the AJCU, we could go out for large-scale national initiatives like this. There are national grant makers. There are going to be many, many more IRA and other funded opportunities, and I think it's central to mission. It is exactly what Laudato Si is all about, and it's a tremendous service that we can offer as a kind of a convener here. So thank you.
Hello, I'm Mark Mackey. I'm a Jesuit brother here at Loyola University, and I teach in the School of Environmental Sustainability. I'm going to kick off the next set of proposals which all have to do with spirituality and community formation. And I'll say a lot of students are drawn to our institutions because of our spirituality, and they get it. But we have a lot of students who think discernment of spirits is choosing what kind of drink you're going to get at the bar. So, hey, all right, that's my bar joke. Thank you. Okay. So, our 4... I turned the lights off with that one. We have eco retreats, simple living eco communities, collaborating with an already established season of creation, and faculty staff orientation and formation. In Jesuit circles, our Father General and a lot of people talk about in the 4 UAPs, we want to see all of them kind of coming through the first UAP if they're going to be called Ignatian or Jesuit, to have an understanding and relate to and integrate into showing the way to God, Ignatian spirituality. So a lot of these are stemming from that, and of course, journeying with youth to a hope-filled future. But I just want to point out, of course, we need to do great work like other institutions and collaborate, like the network of University of California. But eco-spirituality is something pretty unique to Catholic and Jesuit higher ed, right? It's unique and but integral. And I have the good fortune of teaching eco-spirituality here at Loyola, and I find it fascinating and a great opportunity to move in two directions, to take people who don't know a whole lot about the mission or it's not part of their life, but are already enthused about nature and creation and outdoors, go in through that door, but show how it relates to a spirituality and what we do here at Loyola. And similarly, people who are already involved in campus ministry have a faith life to show them how that leads to kind of a impetus and an obligation to be stewards of creation. So it's a beautiful way to bring people together. The first proposal that I'll kick off is, as Mike mentioned, eco retreats. I think it's an easy first start. We have campus ministries, we have retreat programs, we have people that are interested in nature at our places. So you could maybe talk to people from John Carroll or Loyola Chicago or Loyola New Orleans who already have successful eco retreats. And there's a lot of other resources online. It's pretty important, right? If we do read Laudato Si, another unique thing about Pope Francis's approach is that it includes spirituality. It includes taking the time to have an encounter with nature and to understand that nature itself is a transformative place for people. We don't have to do a lot of work other than getting students out and getting faculty out into places like our retreat houses. I think that's all I need to say about that. One thing I'll say is it's also an incredible opportunity for collaboration across the university. For example, here, our LEAF retreat, which I'll speak a little bit more about, we're going into our second annual Loyola Eco-Spirituality and Adventure Retreat, came about from Jeff Peak. He's here at the conference, a campus minister here. He had been at Creighton. They did kind of an outdoor wilderness retreat, an adventure retreat. And he said, I want to combine that call to adventure that students really love with eco-spirituality. So we combined it, and it had a wait list the first year. It has a wait list again this year. It was, I think, the most popular retreat. I've heard similar things in other places. So we're tapping into a need and a desire. We're building community, doing it together, showing how this relates to not only an Ignatian spirituality, but a lot of different faiths. It's a great opportunity for pluralism and just a good time around a campfire.
So proposal 2 is the idea of creating environmentally sustainable on-campus living and learning opportunities such as residential groups, student organizations, shared workshops. The research shows that students that live in a residential sustainable living and learning community, the impact on them is enormous in terms of their future leadership on these issues. We have only 4 of our 28 Jesuit universities that have residential living learning communities, and the reports from all 4 are fantastic. We're just going to try to see if you're interested in such a thing, or even if it seems beyond your scope, maybe you'd be willing to meet with us and talk about it and learn from some folks that have had some good experience. Mary Haskins isn't here. She had to leave, but she's at Rockhurst. And they have a Kateri living and learning community. They started it in 2019. There's 2 separate floors, one for sustainability, eco-spirituality, and one more Catholic and Ignatian focused. The demand exceeds capacity. Every year since they've started it, they can't they can't accommodate all the students that want to join this community. Mission and ministry, resident life, and biology departments collaborate to make this work. And of course, it's named for Saint Kateri Tekakwitha, the Native American patroness of the environment. So we'd be happy to find out if any of you are interested in such a thing. And again, we'll have a subsequent meeting with you if you'd like to think about it.
Good morning and welcome. My name is Jeanette Rodriguez. I'm from Seattle University. So the Pacific Northwest, as with other parts of the country and actually the world, had already experienced melting glaciers, forest fires, droughts, contaminated water, the impact of the fossil fuel industry, so that the people of the Archdiocese of Seattle welcomed Pope Francis's document on integral ecology, because the ideas in that document reflected their understanding of the sacred that they found in beautiful Pacific Northwest, the nature. And so heeding the Pope's leadership, Catholics developed what's called creation care ministries in their parishes throughout the archdiocese. So as these individual groups started to their work, Seattle University then initiated an invitation to collaborate. What we didn't realize or count on is that the parishioners themselves either worked in organizations, right, or corporations that also wanted to make a commitment to sustainability or integral ecology. And so that brought into the conversation and into these opportunities for collaboration a whole slew of people who were both Catholic and not Catholic. And so they formed a collaboration that they called a new solidarity with creation. And in conjunction with the university and either these parishes or these different organizations, we sponsored environmental summits, liturgies, seasons of creation events. How many of you do the season of creation events on your campus? Okay, something to consider. Educational workshops and opportunities to train people for advocacy with their local legislature. The beauty of the Creation Care Network is that it actually reflects and is inspired by the Laudato Si document, specifically in not just addressing the climate crisis, but grounding it in Catholic social teaching with an understanding of the dignity of the human person and the common good, and a commitment also to focus on marginalized communities. So these are issues that are important for future generations, and I'm sure you've experienced this yourself in the universities, that this is the number one concern, commitment that students want when they're looking for a university.
So the 4 universal apostolic preferences provide a fruitful framework for organizing faculty staff orientations and mission formation programs. The 4th UAP, caring for our common home, it seems to me may be the easiest for all faculty and staff to see themselves a part of and to contribute to. Also, all of us have orientation programs of some sort. So a question is, how can we integrate this UAP into those orientation programs and invite faculty and staff to be agents of care for creation in their own context, in different ways? Similarly, all of us have mission formation programs. How can we be more intentional about integrating care for creation into what already exists and enhancing what already exists, in addition to creating new opportunities? So I don't think this QR code works, but there are some QR codes on that side that work. But click on a QR code, and we'll have more of these later on. But to join us in reflecting on this and other community formation and spirituality proposals.
Good morning. My name is Dan DeLeo. I'm from Creighton University. We're going to be presenting some action proposals, and I think it's important to name that whatever else our schools do, we have to decarbonize. We have to cut our own emissions in line with the best available science. And our proposals call for this, but I want to briefly outline the theological foundations for this action, the why behind the what. The Catholic tradition defines faith as the adequate response to God's love. Today, adequate responses require science-based policies to avoid the existential threat of runaway, irreversible climate crisis. However, Pope Francis laments that our responses to the climate crisis have not been adequate. Theologically, and I say this as a moral theologian, refusal to take science-based action amounts to mission infidelity and a social sin of omission, a choice to not adequately respond to God's love. For 35 years, the Church has called for faithful, that is to say, science-based climate action. The Church also calls itself to enact its own teachings. Additionally, Father Daniel Hendrickson, president of Creighton, summarizes that science-based climate action is essential to fulfilling the Jesuits' UAP number 3, Journeying with Youth to a Hope-Filled Future. He writes, as a virtue, hope must be informed by other virtues, especially prudence as right reason applied to action. Faced with modern ecological degradation and the climate crisis, hope, like faith, requires action guided by the best available science. In other words, if an AJCU school isn't committed to prudent, science-based climate action, it isn't committed to authentic Christian hope. Additionally, that school, especially its senior administrators and trustees, undermine the church's credibility. As two Creighton University students wrote following their address to Pope Francis, young people value authenticity and deplore hypocrisy. We told Pope Francis that U.S. Catholic leaders' failure to share and enact the church's own climate teachings is causing many in our generation to become disillusioned with the church. Therefore, this commission calls each AJCU school to first determine a baseline institutional environmental footprint and set ambitious sustainability goals for greenhouse gas emissions, water, waste, food, landscaping, and transportation. Secondly, and more specifically, to commit to the science-based climate targets of the Nobel Prize-winning Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. Cut direct carbon emissions, scopes 1 and 2, in half from 2019 levels by 2030. Reach net zero carbon by mid-century, ideally 2030. And set goals for indirect emissions, or scope 3. And third, to name fundraising for these science-based climate and sustainability goals among its top priorities for development and advancement.
Good morning. Tracy Harvey, the Sustainability Director at Loyola University, Maryland. So as we think about these climate action goals, I'm going to take a second and provide a very brief snapshot of the progress that we've made related to climate action so far as a collective. 14 of 28 institutions have pledged to climate neutrality. 8 have signed the UN, United Nations Race to Zero, which is committing to halving emissions by 2030. And many of our institutions have made significant emissions reductions and emissions pledges. Several of our universities have submitted to STARS, the Sustainability Tracking Assessment and Rating System, which does a really great job of providing a framework and quantitative metrics to really measure the progress related to climate. However, AJCU's collective impact has not really been tracked or shared, at least when it comes to climate action. And this is a really important part of meeting these goals. Without understanding metrics, measurements, you can't really understand the progress. And we have a really exciting opportunity as a collective to come together and make this collective impact. We could really be leaders in this space. We talked about the University of California. AJCU has the potential to do that. Next slide. Another really important piece of meeting these goals is cross-campus collaborations. So sharing best practices, understanding how each institution can come together and meet these goals as a collective. One way that we're helping to kind of foster these connections is through the AJCU Facilities, Public Safety and Sustainability Annual Conference. Historically, there has not been a lot of focus on sustainability at these conferences, but that changed last year when we hosted it at Loyola University, Maryland. We had entire tracks specific for sustainability. We brought in people from AJCU, third-party consultants, to help people understand how they can make their roadmaps to reach their climate action goals. At first, it might be interesting, why facilities, public safety, and sustainability are put together. But what we realized is, especially with climate action, that is the perfect opportunity to come together with our facilities and operations counterparts and to really develop these relationships and understand how we can reach these goals together. Another thing that's come out of this is having quarterly sustainability meetings for any institution that wants to share in their challenges, their progress, and best practices.
Thanks, Tracy. Nancy Tuckman, Loyola University, Chicago. Welcome to our campus, and I am here to share with you some of the successes that our campus has had. And we've been at this pretty seriously for 22 years. So we tend to be leading in this area in the AJCU as well as the International Association of Jesuit Universities. And this is an example of what can be done when you can coordinate well among the leaders of your university. So here's a bit of a timeline of what we've been doing. In 2002, when Father Michael Garanzini was the president of Loyola University, Chicago, he pledged when he was doing a new campus master plan that all new buildings would be LEED certified. He also signed the president's agreement that we would be measuring our greenhouse gas emissions. And those were two key things that happened early on that really got us kind of kick-started. By 2012, 2012, we started an Office of Sustainability, and we hired a director with a staff member. Simultaneously to doing this work by reducing our campus environmental footprint, we were also working in the curriculum in the education side of the university. And so in 2013, we launched the Institute of Environmental Sustainability, which was kind of a little incubator to becoming a school. And in 2020, we actually were ratified as a School of Environmental Sustainability, and now we've got 500 students and 8 different majors and a couple of master's programs. We're still building our faculty and hoping to build a PhD program down the road. Along the way, in 2015, we built a climate action plan, our first one, and it was a 10-year plan that said between 2015 and 2025, we were going to work towards carbon neutrality. And we will be meeting that goal on the 1st of January in 2025. We will be carbon neutral campuses. There are 3 campuses of Loyola University Chicago. In this area, we've also got a Rome campus, and these campuses will be carbon neutral by the 1st of January in 2025. But that's not where we're stopping, because carbon neutrality simply means that for us, all of our electricity will be coming from a big solar plant that we've got a power purchase agreement with. Yet we are still going to be burning natural gas in many of our furnaces and our hot water heaters. And we're going to pay for our sins by using carbon offsets so that we can become carbon neutral. We're still producing greenhouse gases, so we need to get off of all fossil fuels. We need to get off of that natural gas. And so our next climate action plan takes us that next step to be a decarbonized campus. All of our campuses will be decarbonized. And so that's the next new big thing that we're doing. We're also working towards being a zero waste campus, and we want to meet STARS Platinum. Some of the milestones along these 22 years, we've been able to reduce our energy consumption by 40%, and that means that we've reduced our greenhouse emissions by 70%. And that the Race to Zero is asking people, organizations, to reduce their greenhouse gases by 50% by 2050. So we don't think that's very ambitious, and it's not quick enough to really, save the planet from the worst of the problems. Okay, I kind of talked about this, so we can go to the last slide. All the work that we're doing matters to students. It really matters to students. This is a survey that was done by Amnesty International back in 2020, and they surveyed Gen Z students from all 198 UN nations and asked them, what is the most important issue facing the world? And those are the yellow bars, the world, and facing your own country, which are the black bars. And you'll see the top 4 issues, 3 out of the 4 are the environment, degradation to the environment, climate change being number 1. So these issues matter to our students, and they want to go to a place where they can see that the commitment is real. It's not just in a little thing that you do in orientation, but it's in your curriculum. It's happening on your campus. You're really reducing waste, reducing your energy consumption. That matters to students. So when we survey our incoming freshmen every year and we ask them, what about Loyola made you want to come here rather than all the other universities that you were accepted to? 57% of the freshmen coming here say that our commitment to the environment was either important or very important to their choice to come to Loyola. So these are numbers that you can share with the upper administration of your university to demonstrate that there's always costs to these kinds of things. A lot of it is just changing behavior, frankly, which doesn't cost anything, but it requires a lot of work. But the cost is worth it. You're gonna gain back in students what you've spent. Plus, we're helping Francis with advancing his cause.
Well, gosh, what a lot of really, really great ideas. So the next question then is, how are we going to implement these ideas? How are we going to integrate them into our institutions? So that's what I'm here to talk about. How do we make sure that all of the Laudato Si goals are met? All of these goals are reflected in the proposals that you saw, but all of them require implementation, and all of that requires careful attention, again, to how we institutionalize these commitments in our governing structures. So we have 3 proposals. Our first is that we got to get on the wagon, right? We've got many, many schools that have committed to Laudato Si, many that are working very hard on developing their plans. 5 have submitted completed plans, and the rest of us just need to continue to chug away at our plans, seek help where needed, and complete the plans. The next proposal is for all schools to come up with an implementation structure. And by that we mean not just an implementation plan like X will be done, but something that really looks at, who's responsible, how are we integrating that into our institution with people who have authority to make the decisions, with faculty, with staff, with students. And then our last is to create an AJCU Integral Ecology Secretariat, which Chris will talk about more shortly. So I'm just going to briefly talk about an example I admire. We have Jeanette Rodriguez here from Seattle University. I always forget to say who I am. I am Alice Caswan, and I'm here from the University of San Francisco, but I'm a big admirer of Seattle University's structure for institutionalizing here. And I think the keys are the way in which they have really integrated throughout the university, from the highest level of leadership and their commitments, their engagement in these issues, through to including faculty, staff, and others, and also their capacity to coordinate across various aspects of university life. So they have a set of teams for each of the priorities they had in their action plan, and multiple stakeholders on those teams. And then they have an executive sponsor for each one. And that executive sponsor is someone within leadership who has real decision-making authority and knowledge and insight from an institutional perspective. And then there are 2 co-chairs for each of the teams, and then a number of others who are part of the working group that are drawn from the university. So that's the teams, but how do we coordinate then across these teams? The teams, again, are focused each on a single priority. They can focus on that priority. But we have coordination then at Seattle U for an executive committee. That includes 2 action plan steering co-chairs, right, to sort of keep an eye on everybody. And it is this executive council also includes the real highest powers within the university. So the president, all of the executive sponsors that have the decision-making authority over each of the jurisdictions of these teams, right? So key university leaders, and then the co-chairs of each of the teams, and then the steering co-chairs, the ones who are, keeping an eye on everything. So just wanted to offer that as an example. Jeanette gave a wonderful presentation yesterday on Seattle University and is a great resource. But I think many of us are really interested in how are we going to do implementation? What are the best methods for your university, right? It'll be different, but for really integrating and being able to carry out some of the proposals or your own proposals here. I will now turn it over to Chris.
Thank you so much, and thanks for staying with us through this this process. It's our final proposal, and again, want to thank the members of our committee for saying, what is the strategy for implementation and institutionalization? And so we came up with, this is not just a proposal for like the AJCU over there, it's a shared commitment, right? It's a shared commitment to collaboration. So we're proposing that we work together from our individual spaces, from our universities, and with the AJCU to create a secretariat or sort of a substantial position to help coordinate some of this work. That could include a website. We have a little mock-up of a website that some of our student research assistants made that would visualize our missions goals. They would do data integration, research updates, and the like. It may even start with a part-time staff member, but hopefully it could become at a sort of more like a higher level, maybe whatever their board and staff decide is the most appropriate to advance this work. So that is one of our core follow-up proposals. And now as a summary, you've heard that we've organized our 17 specific actions into these 5 categories. Encourage you to sign up for getting follow-up information here. And we really want to use the rest of our time to break out into groups and have a discussion Just for a moment, and I'm going to take this for only for a minute because I want to take advantage of our time, is reflect internally first. Are there 2 or 3 ideas that resonated most with you? And how could you contribute to moving this work forward, both on your campus, but also think about that collectively, right? Just take 30 seconds or so to reflect internally, jot down some notes, catch your breath if we need, maybe I need to. And for our facilitators, will you guys be thinking about where you want to locate your group across the room and then just sort of stand up when we do that next? Well, I think it's easier if they spread themselves out. We can come down here in the front. You can go over in the front maybe, yeah. Oh, hold on 1 second. Okay, if you finished your reflection, our next step is going to be to break up into these 5 different groups. And we've asked each of our leads for discussions around Laudato Si teaching. So we can go ahead and start with that right now. Each one of our team members will be there. So Laudato Si teaching folks are going to be up. Awesome. Laudato Si research team, where will you be located? Okay, over here in the back. You guys are going to be with Julie and Brian. I'll probably be back there too. Laudato Si community formation and spirituality, where will you be? Okay, awesome. Up here in the front. And Laudato Si climate action and sustainability, over here with Nancy and Tracy. And finally, Laudato Si implementation. Okay, excellent. Thank you so much, and we'll look forward to the next stages.
I was volunteered to go first on behalf of the teaching group. So much like yesterday, the first 2 proposals seem to resonate most strongly, integrating integral ecology across the curriculum and creating ways to train faculty to offer them professional development opportunities, faculty and staff, to learn about integral ecology and how to teach it. We discussed a lot about the interdisciplinarity of the subject and how it's important for this not to be viewed as a science. It can be taught by anyone from any discipline, and encouraging institutions to work with the resources that they have rather than trying to necessarily seek out additional resources. Using the expertise that we have in our various programs and departments is a good starting point. I think we also recommend that every institution invite Father Garanzini to come speak with them about the importance of integral ecology, and hopefully use a little bit of the AJCU peer pressure to encourage all institutions to incorporate integral ecology at some level. And also, it's important to start with where we're at, even if those are small changes or small additions, because it takes time. It takes a lot of time to really incorporate integral ecology fully. But if we start with where we are at, even if it's just 25 students in 1 non-majors class, that's better than 0. Did I miss anything?
Do rapid fire for the spirituality group. We talked about living learning communities, how to establish something like that. Don't be afraid of power, and use kind of existing things like living learning communities. Talking about tapping into a season of creation. It already exists. It's low hanging, but we still need some organization, like maybe name one day and think about how can we host a space so not everybody's on separate computers. We talked about retreats. Owen had the good idea of, let's try to meet halfway and meet with partners that are other AJCU schools that are nearby, maybe in a neutral, natural place, opportunities there, and maybe also for the Jesuits that people work with or our faculty members. So thinking outside, broadening that. Some of us are interested in human health and wellness as it relates to the environment. So eco-anxiety being a big topic. We have an eco-anxiety kind of group here, support group. And then finally thinking like we have immersion groups, but a couple of us are doing immersion groups, less with like an intention or project and more like to engage and experience and encounter nature. So continuing to think about this and collaborate. Thanks.
All right, we had really exciting, dynamic conversation about mostly community engaged scholarship and public impact research. I think top line is we all really would like to convene and be convened to share examples of grants, to share resources, to build community. Many of us at our individual institutions do this work on our own, and we don't want to work alone. We want to work together. We talked a lot about institutional changes, so moving from a culture of community engaged learning to community engaged scholarship, and also the barriers and models for overcoming barriers, as in Seattle, for institutionalizing shorter term public impact research with policymakers, community leaders, as a path forward, especially in this area. One content area where there's a lot of interest in kind of the intersectional approach to integral ecology and food justice, sustainable foodways, growing food insecurity, food deserts, looking at faculty development, particularly in engaged scholarship. We looked at how, especially for institutions that are looking to move into a more interdisciplinary or transdisciplinary approach, creating a structure, a center, a consortium in the area of environmental justice, sustainability, ecology is an excellent first step and can be a launch. And then how essential it is to integrate this approach to research into a strategic plan as one of the central pillars, right? Not as one of 68 action items, but really as something that's driving institutional strategy. I'm sure I missed many beautiful things that were said, but it was really great, and I think really the idea of the Secretariat and of the upcoming workshops, if we can begin by raising awareness of the coming grant opportunities and also bringing in our community partners, right? We're not only convening for ourselves, we're looking together with our community partners, with our policymakers, because that is more and more the approach where we're going to be finding the funding to make this work, and where we're going to find the authentic research questions.
We also had really a rich conversation. John Fitzgibbons, who we know has been a president for several years in his past, mentioned the spirituality nurtures operational work and implementation too. So that needs to, be inside any of that kind of activity. Chris, of all the time we've been thinking about this position at AJCU, Chris kind of put it really clearly. He said, all of us wake up in the morning thinking about our students or thinking about our administrative jobs. We need somebody who wakes up in the morning and thinks about how to help the 28 AJCU universities move forward on their environmental sustainability work. And that's beautifully put, and I think that's what we're really hoping, that we get that person who wakes up for us and works. Dan also from the Detroit Mercy said it's really helpful to have an outside person like that who, when you're working internally and you have an administrator that's a climate denier, or that, well, this larger organization is really kind of mandating or requesting certain things. So it was all a rich conversation about the need for this kind of position. So thanks, everybody.
Thank you. So the action group underscored the need for action. We talked about barriers in a sense. One is a mindset in terms of resource scarcity and fear, I think in this higher ed environment. But that's why we added the commitment to funding prioritization. And that's a choice. It's a choice as to whether or not university relations are going to prioritize funding science-based action. We also talked about what has been called the corporatization of higher education. In our context, facilities decisions are really dominated by financial risk and ROI, and discount or exclude Catholic social teaching's calls to integrate social and environmental costs into these decision makings. But going even deeper, we talked about a lack of Catholic social teaching formation among senior administrators and trustees, the ones who actually have the power. As far as I know, not many of us in the room have the power to make these decisions. And Chris shared an anecdote from working with another university that one trustee asked the question, well, why would we invest more money in a sustainable building? And one of the religious trustees responded, if you have to ask why, you might be at the wrong school. I would say at minimum, that person needed some additional mission formation. And I think there's a real danger of spiritualization of mission, that we collapse mission into phrases like persons for others, but we empty it of the objective, normative, ethical standards that are part of the Catholic intellectual tradition. And they're often countercultural, but leaders have to know those standards if they're going to make facilities decisions that are aligned with them. So we talked about science-based action would likely require substantive formation of senior administrators and trustees beyond what they're getting. So sometimes we overcomplicate things. We've got the science, we've got the ethics. It's a question of are we willing to prioritize it or not?
Closing prayer.
So with this image, I want to bring a little Louisiana to Chicago. I want to bring a little Louisiana to Chicago. Let us pause for a moment to give thanks for our time together, to give thanks for creation, and to give thanks for being beautifully and wonderfully made. Let us ask for the vision to see creation as God does in all its splendor and its suffering. Let us ask for the grace to be able to enact the commitments we've dreamed of here, and to do so personally and institutionally. Amen.
Thank you all for joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure, and let's stay in touch and stay engaged.